One strip of wood holds the world together. Beneath it, the river Forth churns, cold and iron dark, swirling like a beast waiting to swallow the unwary. For centuries, this river has divided highland and lowland, and today it divides conqueror and rebel. On the south bank, English armor glitters beneath a pale morning sun. Thousands of archers, knights and men-at-arms, the iron fist of Edward I. Their banners snap sharply, their horses stamping the earth as if impatient to dominate it. Across the water, 6,000 Scots stand on the rocky rise of the Abbey Craig, not a royal host, but a storm of farmers, townsmen and minor nobles, their faces hard with purpose, their spears catching sparks of cold light. To the English, they look like a ragged gathering waiting to be trampled. But the Scots wait for one thing only: the moment the trap closes. By sunset, this river will be thick with English dead, men who believed themselves invincible. September 11, 1297. Morning mist lies heavy over the valley, softening the clang of armor and the restless snorting of war horses. In the English camp, smoke rises from cook fires, mixing with the sour smell of damp wool and tension. The Earl of Surrey, John de Warenne, sits atop his horse, gazing at the narrow wooden bridge. His years of campaigning whisper warnings. The bridge is barely wide enough for 2 riders. Crossing 10,000 men will take hours, hours in which they will be stretched thin and vulnerable. He knows too well the danger of dividing an army under an enemy's eye. His hesitation hangs like a weight over the ranks. But beside him sits Hugh de Cressingham, the king's treasurer, bloated with arrogance and impatience. He is a man who understands coin, not war. To him, delay is waste, and waste is unforgivable. He urges Surrey forward, insisting the rebels are little more than peasants with sticks. He sees no danger in the narrow bridge, no strategy in the Scottish silence. He sees only numbers, cost, and the promise of a quick, crushing victory. That tension, experience versus arrogance, splits English leadership like a fault line. High on Abbey Craig, concealed by wind-shaken pines, William Wallace and Andrew Moray watch the confusion unfold. Wallace, massive and fierce-eyed, stands like a carved figure against the sky. Moray, sharper and more measured, studies the terrain as if reading a map written by God himself. They know they cannot face English knights on open ground. Heavy cavalry are unstoppable in a field charge, iron thunder capable of shattering infantry lines. So they have chosen this place with precision. The river bends into a natural loop, forming a muddy basin where horses sink and lines cannot form. What looks like open meadow is a trap of soft ground and constricted movement. Here, the knight's advantage dissolves. Here, freedom has a chance. English heralds ride forward, offering surrender. Their voices echo faintly across the water. Wallace answers not with negotiation, but with fire. We are not here to make peace, but to defend ourselves and liberate our kingdom. His words roll across the field like a storm front. The Scots tighten grips on ashwood spears. They watch English disarray, soldiers forming, halting, reforming, because Surrey overslept. It is chaos, masquerading as discipline, and with each misstep, Scottish resolve hardens like steel quenched in water. At last, the English banners unfurl. Red crosses flap in the breeze. The vanguard begins to move. Hooves strike the wooden planks with deep, rhythmic thuds, echoing over the water like the heartbeat of fate. 2 by 2, armored knights cross the cramped bridge. Their polished helms sparkle, their war horses snort clouds into the cold air. Cressingham rides at their head, eager to claim a quick victory. A river of metal flows slowly over a river of darkness. On the north bank, the English try to fan out, but the river bends sharply, hemming them in on 3 sides. The ground is soft, churned by earlier attempts to form. Horses sink deeper with every step. Knights jostle shoulder to shoulder, unable to maneuver. Their greatest weapon, momentum, dies in the mire. Behind them, infantry crowd forward, pressing into gaps where no order remains. What should be a formation becomes a bottleneck of iron and fear. Still, the Scots remain motionless. Wallace and Moray hold their men back with iron discipline. Waiting is the hardest part, watching the enemy assemble, feeling the urge to strike. But they wait for precision. Enough English across to make the blow decisive, not enough to overwhelm. The sun climbs. More English pour across, their weight shaking the bridge. Every passing second feeds the trap. On the Craig, the tension crackles. Scottish spearmen lean forward, eyes locked on the cramped enemy below. They can see the fear spreading, horses stamping in frustration, knights shouting, men looking back over their shoulders toward the shrinking line of escape. 2,000 English now crowd the river loop, cut off by the deep water. Moray meets Wallace's eyes. The balance has tipped. It is time. A single horn blast erupts across the hillside. It echoes like a war cry from the earth itself. The Scots surge downward, 6,000 men moving as one, schiltrons bristling with 12-foot spears. These are not static circles, but living machines of war, advancing with terrifying unity. Moray's left wing sweeps toward the bridge, their boots thundering over soil and stone. They rush not to kill, but to shut the door. The English knights see the wall of spears racing toward them. Panic flashes across their faces. They try to urge their horses forward, but the mud clings like a fist. The Scots crash into their flank with the force of a falling cliff. Spears crack against armor, shields splinter. Men scream as iron meets flesh. The Scots fight with the fury of a people defending every inch of their homeland. The English, trapped and immobile, cannot absorb the shock. Chaos consumes the bridgehead. Scots seize the northern end, forming a living barricade of shields and spears. The English vanguard is now cut off entirely. In the muddy basin, the slaughter begins. Knights flounder, unable to turn or charge. Lochaber axes hook them from saddles, dragging them down into sucking mud. Light-footed Scots swarm over fallen men, plunging daggers through visor slits. The battle becomes brutal and close, breath against breath, steel scraping against bone. Chivalry dies in the filth. The schiltrons press forward relentlessly, forcing the English back toward the water. Infantry stumble, pushed by their own knights, and tumble into the deep current. Weighted by armor, they vanish in moments. The river thrashes with desperate limbs before pulling its victims under. The water, once dark, now glimmers with streaks of red. On the bridge, panic becomes madness. Rear ranks push forward, unaware of the carnage ahead. Knights try to retreat, colliding with their own men. Horses rear, crushing soldiers against the rails. Bodies topple into the churning river, vanishing beneath the surface. Screams echo beneath crashing hooves. The bridge shudders under the chaos, its old timbers groaning. Then a crack cuts through the air sharper than any sword. The bridge snaps. Wood splinters as hundreds of men and horses plunge into the Forth in a roaring collapse. A cry rises from both banks, Scottish triumph, English despair. The bridge, the only lifeline, is gone. The river becomes a grave with no mercy. For the English trapped on the north bank, the collapse is a death sentence. They stand alone with no escape, no reinforcement. Among them is Hugh de Cressingham. His former arrogance dissolves into raw terror. Mud-smeared and unhorsed, he faces the very people he bled dry with taxes. There is no ransom for him. Chroniclers claim his death is savage, years of anger unleashed in a single moment. The symbol of English greed is torn from the earth. Wallace strides through the wreckage like a figure carved from legend. Corpses drift in the reddening water. The air is thick with smoke, blood, and silence. Stories say he cut a strip from Cressingham's flesh for a sword belt, not out of cruelty, but as a message carved in human arrogance. Scotland will not bow again. The river runs heavy with the ruin of Edward's northern army. Across the water, Surrey watches in horror. His army dissolves before his eyes, swallowed by river and spear. Debris floats by, broken shields, splintered arrows, limp bodies. His courage breaks. This is not defeat, it is humiliation. He abandons the Stirling Castle garrison and flees south. The mighty English war machine scatters like autumn leaves whipped by a storm. As the sun sinks behind the Ochil Hills, the field lies in grim silence. Among the wounded lies Andrew Moray, pale and bleeding. His leadership carved the victory, but his life drains into the soil he defended. He will live long enough to see Scotland proclaimed free, but not long enough to see spring. His sacrifice leaves Wallace alone to bear the mantle of legend. Weeks later, a letter bearing the names of Moray and Wallace reaches Lubeck and Hamburg. It announces that Scotland has been reclaimed from English rule by force of arms. Traders, nobles, and kings read the message with astonishment. Scotland lives. Wallace is knighted by the will of the people and named Guardian of Scotland, rising from outlaw to leader of a nation. The Battle of Stirling Bridge is more than a victory, it is transformation. It shatters the myth of English invincibility and proves that unity, strategy, and purpose can defeat even the greatest empire. It signals the twilight of the armoured knight's supremacy. The land itself fought for Scotland, moulded by leaders who understood that the bridge was not a road, it was a trap. Edward Longshanks will return with fury and fire. The war will rage for decades. But nothing can erase what happened here. Mud swallowed cavalry. Common men's pikes broke the pride of feudal lords. The memory of Stirling Bridge becomes a heartbeat, echoing through generations, a reminder that freedom is forged by those who hold the line when the odds are impossible. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Like, share, and subscribe to bring more forgotten battles, hidden histories, and heroic moments back into the light. Join me for the next journey into the past.